Adam Green here with No More News. It's February 21st, 2019, and in this video I want to get into end times prophecy, third Jewish temple, Antichrist, and tie it in with technology and artificial intelligence. So I've been covering this end times Jewish third temple prophecy quite a bit on my channel. Videos like the Jerusalem conspiracy, the Donald Trump Jewish temple prophecy, is Jared Kushner the Jewish Messiah? I'll get into a little bit of Kushner later, one of my most popular videos there. The plan to destroy the Temple Mount, the third Jewish temple prophecy, and many more. I've been talking about it a lot. Also up on my BitChute, I have my documentary, 2.5 hour documentary, God's Chosen People. It was censored immediately on YouTube, but it's available on BitChute. So usually I cover the majority of people that want to rebuild the temple and fulfill the end time stuff, the Christian Zionists. They want to have a physical temple on the Temple Mount. They say that's the only place that it can go, and they need to destroy the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa in order to make way and clear the space for the third temple to be built. And they claim to have all the artifacts ready to put in the temple. They have claim to have the red heifer that they need to sacrifice on the altar. They just dedicated the altar. They've got the huge golden menorah already in Jerusalem ready. They've got the Levite priest trained. But there's different opinions. Some people don't believe that you should actually build the temple. They think that the temple was going to come down from above, from the clouds. So this is the Mitzvah project, meaning the temple project, building the third temple. There's the photo they have of it there. Another goal of the Mitzvah project is to help build the third temple on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. So there's other people that believe it should go in alternative places. We are currently collecting money to search the tunnels under the Temple Mount in order to find the Golden Ark and other important artifacts. The rabbi from the Temple Institute says that they have the chamber where the Golden Ark is located, that it was hidden, it was never lost. And there's also some new metal scribes that were found that they believe is the treasure map to these underground chambers. So they say, when the time comes, we plan to assist in preparing the ashes of the red heifer used for purification purposes. That's sacrificing the cow that has all red hairs on it, and it has to be a certain age on the altar. At some point, they will be collecting money for blueprints, building supplies, and for preparing the site. They want to educate the public, raising their consciousness regarding this controversial topic. Of course, there are many opinions about the third temple. There are many opinions. Some people feel that the third temple will come down from the sky already built. Based on Rambam's teachings, we count the building of the temple as one of the 613 mitzvot that the Jewish people must accomplish. So they disagree. Some people think that they need to build it and then the Moshiach, their Messiah, will come. Or some people think that the Moshiach will come and then lead them back to Israel, and then he will rebuild the temple. So I'm going to go down this rabbi hole, if you will, about the third temple coming from on above. Here is Chabad.org. Chabad is the largest Jewish organization in the world, highly influential in Trump's administration, and all presidents for that matter. The Rebbe's Education Day, I've covered it a bunch. So they have here Chabad.org. The temple descends from on high. And it says, the temple, holy temple, to descend from the heavens to the mountains of Jerusalem. You can see the painting there with the temple coming down from the clouds, already pre-built. And we also have, will we use technology to build the third temple? That's Chabad.org again. Interesting photo there. When Moshiach comes and the temple is rebuilt, what role will technology play in the construction process? Will we be using laser cutters and cranes, or will we be using the Iron Age techniques of the first two temples? So we're going to follow this thread, this lead: technology and the temple, artificial intelligence. And that's a lot of people have been covering this already on YouTube and on the internet. Tech and the Antichrist, they believe there's connections there, also with CERN and artificial intelligence and the Antichrist. Fulfilling prophecy, artificial intelligence, is that the mark of the beast? Some people believe the singularity will be the end times. And I want to go over this really interesting long article from Wired magazine. called Apocalypse Now. This is just one of the most insane things I've ever read. How a hologram, a blimp, and a massively multiplayer game could bring peace to the Holy Land. Hayaraman holds the key to peace on Earth. It's on a floppy disk in his pants pocket with his full white beard, bald pat, and pressed khakis. He looks like Moses. He wants to position an airborne hologram over the Dome of the Rock, a gold-capped shrine that's one of the most holy sites in Islam. The blimp will go there, he says, pointing into the blue, and eventually the Messiah will come. So right away, this reminds everybody, I'm sure, of the quote-unquote conspiracy theory Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam is a conspiracy theory that claims that NASA is attempting to implement a new age religion with the Antichrist at its head and start a new world order via technologically simulated second coming. Very interesting. So they call it a conspiracy theory there, but here they are working on this. They've been obsessed with it for decades. There's a photo of it, the Project Bluebeam. See the blimp there and the ground-based lasers shooting it up. I've seen something like this in Las Vegas, I believe. At Sheldon Adelson's, was it Las Vegas? Somewhere I saw a light show, and I believe it was Sheldon Adelson's hotel that had it, if I remember correctly. So that just came to my mind right there. I'll have to look more into that later. For 1,500 years, Jews, Christians, and Muslims have fought over the control of this 35-acre plateau in the heart of Jerusalem. This dispute remains one of the main obstacles to peace in the Middle East. Jewish teachings say that a temple must be built here. Many say on the exact spot where the dome now stands in order to induce the arrival of the Messiah and the coming of peace on earth. Fundamentalist Christians interpret this to mean the second coming of Christ and actively encourage Jewish building efforts. Yeah, they do. All the Christian Zionists are behind it. What Muslims categorically oppose any encroachment on their holy site, from which they believe Muhammad ascended to heaven to receive the Quran. So they're all fighting over this holy land. So this guy, since I can't pronounce his name, I'm just going to call him this Mott, believes he has found a way to resolve the intractable conflict. What most people see is that if the Muslims are here, surely there is no temple. They do not understand that technology has given us the tools to realize the prophecy right now. He has two big ideas. So it's not just Project Bluebeam with the lasers over the dome. Two ways to engineer the apocalypse. The first, a hovering holographic temple. He wants to set up an array of high-powered, water-cooled lasers and fire them into a transparent cube suspended beneath a blimp. The flickering image, he says, would fulfill an ancient, widely revered Jewish prophecy that the temple will descend from the heavens as a manifestation of light. He hopes to finance the project with some $20 million that he wants to get from a patent infringement that doesn't sound like he's going to get from Palm. The rest of the money would be poured into his second idea for jump-starting the end times. A virtual temple within a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. So this is his second idea. A virtual temple within a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. The goal is for thousands of people to join in its construction on the web. He wants to display progress reports in the floating hologram as kind of an apocalyptic scoreboard. So that's his second idea, which reminds me of the plot from this movie called Ready Player One, when the creator of a virtual reality world called Oasis, he makes it in it's a future world where everybody's puts on this virtual reality gear, and they're just spending all this time as their sim character playing in a new world. I'm pretty sure there's been other video games similar. Also the Matrix type of idea, very interesting. But back to this, we say whether it's a hologram or a cyber structure, he believes that a techno-temple does away with the need for a physical building. Under his scheme, Jews and Christians would get a biblically accurate temple without razing or destroying the Dome of the Rock. More on that later. It may sound crazy, but every other effort of this peace has failed, and partisans on all sides are surprisingly open to his proposals. Partisans on all sides are interested. Wait till you hear about it. So here's a quote from the Talmudic scholar Rashi. The future temple, which we are expecting, is built and perfected and will be revealed and descend from heaven. He and okay, so was this, encourage other tech innovation. Okay, so he lives out in this small right-wing settlement, and him and his friend, I thought it said something about what he looked like. One time, he used to be an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, and they developed a forerunner to this virtual reality video game with financing from the Jewish Agency for Israel, a foundation to establish to encourage, among other things, tech innovation. Sounds like Technion or Unit 8200. He believed faith in himself is a little, faith in at times annoying. He talks about flash. So the guy's a lunatic, essentially. He talks about flash floods and gods for hours without pause while he drives and doesn't notice when I doze off. When I wake up, he's still talking. Quote, God has given me a mission, he says, speaking in a thoughtful, accented English as rain pounds the windshield. I am here to show that the temple can be rebuilt peacefully in such a way that it will bring the beginning of a new age. What's fascinating about his vision of the apocalypse is that it's not the bloodbath that fundamentalist Christians imagine. It is the end of the current world with all its inequity and injustice and the beginning of a new perfect earth ruled by their Messiah. Ruled by, and this is not Jesus, Christians. They know that. They know the Antichrist. They want the Antichrist to come, and they want mass wars and peace deals and all of the end times prophecy so that Jesus can return. This guy has pursued this theme his entire life. He was born into a wealthy family. He inherited a small fortune in real estate, and his grandfather was one of the founders of Tel Aviv. It has been family's mission to build cities in new ways, and what could be a better life goal than designing the ultimate building, the structure that will trigger the redemption of the world. I have always thought of myself as God's architect, he says matter-of-factly. So here's a photo of him. And it says, he still thought of it as work on the temple. His PhD dissertation in cybernetics described how a virtual temple mount could create common ground for Jews and Arabs to interact in ways they otherwise never would. So cybernetics, more on cybernetics later when I tie in another movie with this. So he came up with this idea on the barren mountains that ring the Dead Sea, where Jesus was tempted by Satan and where Jewish rebels committed mass suicide 4 years after the destruction of the last temple in 70 AD. So this is where he came up with his holographic temple idea. He was inspired in part by the passage in Midrash Rabbah, a collection of Torah analysis written more than 1,000 years ago, which say that the temple will descend fully built from heaven as a manifestation of light. It's a prophecy that many Jews have embraced because it suggests that only God can build the temple. But they found a loophole, always good at finding loopholes. He realized that another way to get a temple of light to descend from the heavens was to combine a blimp with hologram-producing lasers. The structure would consist of a transparent polyurethane cube supported by a lightweight metal frame, an onboard fog machine that would pump mist into the enclosure to serve as a screen for the lasers, and a blimp and blah blah blah. So for the first time in 1967, Israel captured the Temple Mount. It was in Jewish hands for the first time in 2,000 years, and many Jews and Christians thought that this was an electrifying moment. The Israeli government finally had the chance to destroy the dome and build the prophesied temple, but then Moshe Dayan returned day-to-day control to the Temple Mount, to the Mount of the Islamic Trust. In the 1980s, this guy with this plan began meeting with Israeli officials to discuss the rebuilding of the temple. Jerusalem city engineer told him they had no plans on the Israeli side to do so, and that the Muslims controlled it and it would cause an uprising, and the city manager ended the meeting. Politicians don't want to address the Temple Mount as a religious problem, he says, slowing for a security checkpoint. They think that Jews and Arabs should just get rid of their idiotic religions and then everything will be okay. But the whole reason we are here is because of religion, and if you just divide the land, you end up with a situation similar to India and blah, blah, blah. They want it all. Then Solomon said, quote, "The Lord has said that he would dwell in a dark cloud. I have indeed built a magnificent temple for you, a place for you to dwell forever. That's 1 Kings. Despite his long beard, so this is his friend, this guy's plan. He goes to his compound, his little settlement, and there's this other guy, Ezrahi. Despite his foot-long beard, Ezrahi looks surprisingly young when he opens the door, pushing back his frizzy, his hair in a trailer home. He has more than 100 books. Most are devoted to the Kabbalah, the secretive offshoot of the Jewish mysticism traditionally taught only to the most advanced students of the Torah, also deeply connected to Freemasonry. I did a video the other day about Trump's Kabbalah Tree of Life award he got in 1983, and I get deep into that. Noahide laws, Kabbalah, connection to Chabad Lubavitch and the Ashkenazis, and Sabbatean Frankism. And as Ezrahi and this other guy developed the game, some of the Kabbalism seeped in. So it's full of Kabbalah. It's still there in dozens of esoteric riddles and puzzles. And now this game has evolved into a cross between Myst and Doom set within the walls of Old Jerusalem. Players navigate the narrow streets and busting marketplaces trying to uncover and decipher Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scriptures, clues relating to the end times. They can choose to kill each other, but they won't be able to move to the next level if they do. The goal is to unlock the secret that will induce the coming of the Messiah. In the book of Revelations, so he says the game itself may fulfill prophecy. The book of Revelations describes the new Jerusalem, which will encompass the entire earth, he says, citing Revelation 21. The online worldwide virtual reality version of Jerusalem is the only thing that could fulfill that requirement. The digital version of the city would exist in Germany or Indonesia at the same time it exists in Jerusalem itself. And then we got some more art here about the temple. The main agenda, the end game of Zionism is all about the temple and ruling the world with their Messiah. They call it a conspiracy theory that I say that they're secretly planning to take over the world. Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, a shrine of the prophets, a Supreme Court of mankind in Israel. The Sanhedrin asking to or wanting to destroy the United Nations so that they can have a new United Nations under Noahide laws based out of Jerusalem. On and on and on, more examples. The Rothschilds being asked to buy the Temple Mount so that they could rebuild the temple. It's what Zionism is all about. So another guy here, a neo-Hasidic Kabbalistic rabbi, he's a graphic designer that's worked on children's books. Always wonder how all that symbolism gets all over the media, guys, right? We got Kabbalistic, neo-Hasidic rabbis all over the media, probably, in Hollywood and stuff. He says, but behind Michael Jackson, I documented that with Rabbi Shmuley Botek, who is Chabad Lubavitch connected to the Rebbe. We were going to hook players up to biofeedback sensors and throw demons at them if they got angry. How's that for virtual reality? Just like that game Ready Player One, they had similar stuff. So now they're going to pitch this video game idea, this virtual reality world, to this guy named Yossi Surya, the executive vice president of a video game company and a News Corp company. So that's under Rupert Murdoch. And wait till you see this guy who is the executive for Rupert Murdoch. This guy, Yossi, he is in charge of delivery of movies and TV shows to 34 million cable and satellite subscribers around the world. The Jerusalem-based R&D arm of the company is developing a platform for multiplayer gaming, and Surya is interested in the Jerusalem gaming system. Surya, as Rahi asked, isn't he one of those who tried to blow up the dome of the Rock back in the 80s? So the old plan, there's been plans before to blow up the Dome of the Rock so the temple can be rebuilt. The guy in charge, an executive at News Corp under Rupert Murdoch, was literally in jail for trying to destroy the Dome of the Rock. Yossi looks like a prototypical Silicon Valley executive with khakis, dress shirt, schoolboy haircut, and he's in charge of a strategy and technology for a company that grossed nearly $450 million in its last fiscal year. You'd never suspect that in his younger days he was part of one of the most ambitious plots to destroy the Dome of the Rock. Look at the power he has now and still trying to do it in other ways. Surya's story sounds like the plot of a straight-to-video movie in the early 1980s. He joined a group of 26 other well-educated, politically connected young Israeli men who decided to investigate the rebuilding of the temple by blowing up the dome. There was also an Israeli film about this in the year 2000 called Time of Favor, all about extremist rabbi convincing one of his students to go put steel wet bombs from the IDF, strap them to his chest, go to the chambers below the Temple Mount and to blow the thing up. And just recently there was a whole TV series called Dig, all about a messianic cult that wants to blow up the Dome of the Rock from below too. So it's all over in the media. But they say it's all a conspiracy. They'll say this is anti-Semitic just for reading all mainstream media Chabad Lubavitch articles. They loaded a Jeep full of stolen explosives from the Israeli army, manufactured their own bombs, and drew up a scheme to strap 28 charges to the dome's pillars. They planned meticulously, every little detail. But Shin Bet, Israel's FBI, unraveled the conspiracy, and he was quick. He pleaded guilty and spent almost 2 years in jail. He was young and stupid. 2 years in jail for wanting to blow up a terrorist act of one of the Islam's most holiest site. He gets 2 years in jail. And now look where he's at now. Still trying to possibly fund video games to make this happen. So he greets this guy warmly. They sit at a table. The assumption of the game he begins at the Temple Mount is the central of the destiny of the planet. Yeah, it's everyone's destiny. The temple is for everyone. Everybody must acknowledge and bow to their Moshiach and comply with their Noahide laws, which one of them says that you cannot speak harshly about the temple, the Moshiach, the rabbis, the Torah, any of it. So basically no criticism at all whatsoever, which is exactly what they're trying to implement right now in Congress with all of these new anti-Semitic bills that they've already passed as well. And you can look up the definition of anti-Semitism at state.gov websites where they say, all this video right here, me talking about their plans for a end times prophecy, that this is considered hate speech, anti-Semitism, and could be grounds for to get censored. Already does get me censored, but in the future could be totally shut down. So let's see what else we have here. He does a speech about interactive psychological and social systems. So he's really going to try to more photos. And then now they're saying that the Islamic Trust is going to allow them to have this Project Bluebeam laser hologram temple. We have heard of this is the Imam in the Dome of the Rock, in the Islamic Trust inner sanctum. He goes in there and talks to him, and the Imam says, "We have heard of this man's projections of light." He responds, speaking slowly and cautiously, quote, "And we will allow it to happen here when there is a peace settlement." When there is a peace settlement. Well, what do you know? Mr. Chabad Lubavitch, Jared Kushner, Mr. Who's really running the White House, has a Middle East peace plan expected after the Israeli elections. And a recent rabbi just said that shortly at the end of the elections, that's when the Messiah will become known. The Messiah is supposed to have the Antichrist is supposed to have a peace deal. Interesting. And since I'm on that topic, also might as well, and we're talking about technology, Jared also runs the Innovation Office. What does Jared's office actually do? Well, when a dozen and a half CEOs of the world's biggest tech companies descended on the White House last month, it turned a spotlight on one of the bigger mysteries of the mysterious White House. They were convened by the Office of American Innovation, the new operation being run by presidential son-in-law Jared Kushner. So Jared Kushner is in charge of all of the tech companies, working with all the tech companies. Kushner's office is intended as the White House's main point of contact for the American tech industry. How interesting is that? Kushner's double connections. Oh, and by the way, my video about Kushner, if you want to see more on that. And I'm going to do an updated Jared Kushner, is Jared Kushner the Jewish Messiah, part 2 very soon. So, what do we have here? So the Muslims agree they will do it, allow this projection of light once there's a peace deal settlement. And do we have anything else? So if you look up in Google, in the web, you see the struggle over the Temple Mount before coming here. It was called a powder keg, ground zero for the apocalypse, and a fuse that is already burning. Every day, Jewish zealots are praying for the destruction of the Dome of the Rock, and there are legions of Muslims ready to give their lives to avenge its desecration. I've showed it in my videos on the playlist. it shows a bunch of Christians and Jews all talking about wanting to destroy it. How will I prefer? So some people don't agree, and they take scripture literally in a different way, and they go, "How am I going to sacrifice animals if the temple is on a computer or if it's just a hologram?" And some of these guys are Jewish men. Oh, it's called the Temple Guard, and it's 32. Oh, demands a 32-year-old member of the recently small group of primarily young Jewish men dedicated to rebuilding a physical temple as soon as possible. Lambs must be sacrificed on the temple's altar. So they have to have that blood sacrifice, which is another thing they say is we're not allowed to talk about at the .gov website. Blood libel, blood sacrifice. So what happens to the dome? You take the mosque and blow it away, he says calmly. That's that's the guy that's behind this temple group. What happens to the dome? You blow it away, he says calmly. And then this guy cites the temple will come from the sky. This is a possibility he allows, but there's still the matter of how to sacrifice the temples. Do you bring a lamb hologram into this guy as well? The way that they try to do these mental gymnastics to around these laws, these man-made laws, man-made rules that they all come up with and argue over. So now there's this guy. The Christian Zionists are involved with this too. Hovind, I guess his name is, a founder of the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem and the director of International Christian Zionist Center. A Dutch minister moved to Jerusalem in 1968. Yeah, he wants the temple to rebuild because it will trigger the return of the Jesus Christ. And his talk of a, quote, army of Christians ready to help Israel has resonated through the highest levels of Israeli politics. I bet it does. As Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu had dinner with this Christian Zionist that's getting an army of Christian Zionist, Schofield reference Bible duped Christians, helping them with the Antichrist. Both the Old and New Testament say there is no possibility for Jesus to come except that there is a temple waiting for him, he says with uplifted eyebrows. Yeah, a lot of Christians will totally disagree with that, and they will say that Jesus said that there's no need for a new temple. That the temple is Christianity, or the temple is in our hearts. We are the temple. That's the interpretation. Hovind has spoken with this video game guy about the holographic temple and the Jerusalem game system, and he cautiously supports the efforts. Quote, the Jews have not come back from Auschwitz and 6 million dead to stand at a stupid piece of wailing wall, he adds. So they need to have the temple because of Auschwitz, basically. That's the logic behind that argument. Seems to realize that the wall is not the climax of history. He too has a wooden scale model and proudly shows off pictures of the third temple. Quote, if it is true that the third temple will be the result of these holograms, fantastic. And the technology is ready. He says the time has come to take action. Long article, but a lot of crazy stuff. All the Kabbalah rabbis, all the Project Bluebeam, all the virtual reality Matrix, Ready Player One type of themes. And then here we have BBC News, BBC trending. Smartphone users warned to be careful of the Antichrist. Be careful of the Antichrist. Who is saying this? Patriarch Kirill conducting a Christmas liturgy. The Antichrist is the person who will be at the head of the World Wide Web, controlling all of humankind, he said. Almost sounds like Netanyahu with his tech takeover that he's been bragging about so much. All the backdoors with Intel and Microsoft and Apple with their R&D over there, and the whole cryptocurrency and blockchain going on in Israel. They're bragging about all of their cyber security superiority. He wants to have a UN for the internet, and basically says controlled by Israel because they're the best at it. He says, do you imagine what power will be concentrated in the hands of those who gain knowledge about what is going on in the world? Such control from one place forebodes the coming of the Antichrist. Do I have anything else here saved? No, I don't. So how about that? Do you imagine the power concentrated in the hands of those who gain knowledge about what is going on in the world? Reminds me of the plot of Terminator Genesis. How it's basically a mixture of Facebook and Google and Apple, a Silicon Valley tech company that creates Skynet. They work with the robots, which, by the way, Google bought up all the big robot companies a number of years ago. and they have advanced they have supercomputers and machine learning stuff. All Google has all companies like that. Also life extension technology. So the plot here of Terminator Genisys, it's all about Skynet in Judgment Day. Skynet is basically Apple or Google. Sarah and Kyle learn about Genesis, a soon-to-be unveiled operating system that will be used on every computer system worldwide. Kind of like all the chips made by Qualcomm, and who is connected to owned by Irwin Jacobs, who is involved with Technion in Israel and deep ties with Israel. A lot of the all behind 5G being created with Qualcomm, connected to Israel. And all of the Snapdragon processors that are in all the cell phones and all of the Intel chips that are in the computer, Intel literally says they're just as much an Israeli company as an American company. So it'll be on every computer system worldwide, and they realize that this is Skynet's precursor, and also talking about not nano-machine hybrids. Cyberdynes, remember the Hasidic, neo-Hasidic, Kabbalistic rabbi? He did his studies were in I can't remember the term now, cyber biology, something like that. Cyberdyne's Genesis mainframe before it comes online. Cyberdyne San Francisco headquarters. And another movie, remember what this said here? Such control about everything. Another movie, The Circle with Tom Hanks. The plot of that is all about, again, another social media company has spies on everything, has cameras everywhere, knows everything you do, the dangers of that. But they're going to use supercomputers to crunch all this big data numbers and essentially be able to predict the future and or blackmail anybody, or be able to suppress any new technology, any new discoveries. It's basically a monopoly on information in the information age. Again, we got Kushner probably working with all of these companies. Check out that Jared Kushner and doing